Welcome to the Wetzel State Recreation Area.
The Wetzel State Recreation Area is a little over 900 acres. It was originally established in 1969, but nothing has really ever been done to it. It's still mostly undeveloped land. It has had some wildlife and wetland restoration efforts done over the years, but it's mostly just a series of trails through the wetlands and farmlands area here in Macomb County.
Wetzel State Recreation Area is named for an American hero, Walter Wetzel, who was from Roseville, Michigan, here in this area, and joined the Army during World War II. He received the nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor, for his selfless act in April of 1945. He was helping to guard a platoon command post, and in the middle of the night, the Germans moved in to attack. He ran into the house to alert his fellow soldiers and then defended the house. When the Germans got close enough, they tossed 2 grenades through the windows into the room where he and others were. And Walter Wetzel shouted to his comrades and then dove on top of both grenades, taking the impact when they exploded. He was killed by the blow, but saved many of his fellow soldiers by his selfless act and was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously a year later. Walter was buried in the American Cemetery in the Netherlands.
If you're following Google Maps to get here, it's not going to take you to the exact right place. In fact, it took us to the dirt parking lot, sort of at the end of the trail system, near actually what is the Radio Control Club of Detroit's flying field. And so while it is open, it is part of the park, it's not exactly the main part of the park. We did find that section, which is where we're standing now. It's about a couple miles north, and it's got a paved lot, it's got restrooms, a sign, and sort of where the picnic tables are, and it's closer to the trailhead for the parks here. So just something to be aware of, that if you're all of a sudden you find yourself on this dirt road and it looks like you're in the middle of nowhere and the sign says you're on a dead end, it's true, you will be on a dead end, and it is part of the park, but it's not the main entrance. So just kind of look at the map. There is a map at both parking lots so you can get your bearings, but it is a nice place no matter which entrance you go to.
One of the hiking apps told us that there are several loops here at Wetzel, and they total about 4 miles in distance. There's nothing that I could find here on the signs or anything that confirm that for me, so I'm gonna go with those numbers based on what hikers in the area have posted.
And most of the trail is pretty much just a mowed grassy path through the wetlands areas. It's pretty wet, no thanks to the gajillion and 1 days of rain that we have had here in Michigan. But I think just because it is wetland area, it's probably gonna be wet most of the year, no matter what the conditions are.
Yeah, unless for some reason we have a really dry summer. I mean, you're right near the wetlands, so it's gonna be in that area of the water that's already here, and the water table's probably pretty high. We're on a paved path right now. This is a relatively short path. It takes you out to a couple of picnic tables that sit between a couple of the, I guess they're ponds.
Lakes.
They're not really lakes.
There's a couple guys out fishing, so
so it's small. I mean, it's a nice little area. I would think this is probably a big area for people who like to fish. It is a state recreation area, so it is open to hunting at certain times of the year. I can see people out here doing that, but it's just sort of the DNR says it's undeveloped.
Yeah, it's definitely undeveloped. I mean, it does have, like you said, the picnic tables, this little paved path, restrooms at the parking lot, but essentially it's just a place for wildlife watching. I mean, that's really, if you lived in this area, it'd probably be a nice place to come out different times of the year to see the geese on the water and different birds, and just check out the nature.
Yeah, it's a day use park only. It's not very big. There's a lot of acreage here, but not a whole lot in order to walk around on. But yeah, if you're in the area, check it out. It might be a cool place at certain times of the year to see different wildlife.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that'd be a good spot for that.
Welcome to Algonac State Park. You can see Canada from here.
A little over 20 miles away from Wetzel State Recreation Area is the Algonac State Park. And we're northeast of Detroit. We're along the St. Clair River. So Lake St. Clair sits northeast of Detroit, and then you get the St. Clair River that feeds that lake, and we're up a little bit north of that. We're actually across the river from Canada.
Michigan very is close, actually.
Yeah, Michigan is one of those places where you can go south to get to Canada.
Yeah,
people don't always realize that. But there are two campgrounds here. There were none at Wetzel, but they make up for by having two here at Algonac.
Yeah, there are two campgrounds here. One of them is right along the road, which is right across from the river. And one of the key things to do at this park is to watch the freighters go by. Actually, that's just pretty a cool activity. Anywhere you're up and down the river, people do that for fun. So if you want to do that, you want one of the campsites that's right along the river, or at least in the campground so you can just kind of walk over to the day use area. If that's not really your thing, or you don't want to be right by the road, there's a separate campground further into the park that's more in a wooded area. And I think that's really cool because the sites are paved, they're a little bit further apart, there's more foliage between the sites, so it's a little bit more private, but it's still only a short walk or a bike to the front of the park where you can watch those freighters or hang out at the picnic table areas.
Yeah, there's a nice little day use area that we're sitting in here with plenty of picnic tables. There's plenty of parking. If you wanted to drive up from your campsite, there'd be places here to park. The campground that's further back into the woods away from the river is actually a little bit cheaper. It's about $6 less a night for 30 amp to be in the back of the park as opposed to being right up by the river. But like you said, a lot of people come here to watch the freighters go up and down the St. Clair River, it's pretty busy in the summertime. You can see quite a few of them. The other thing I would note is they have upgraded part of the front campground. So the river campground has 50 amp service in some of the sites. It seems like most of those are the ones that are up front here along the river. I'm assuming that's probably the more popular sites because people come here to do that. But check your map and you will find, let's see, the back campground also had paved pads.
They did have paved pads, which we didn't notice here in the front campground. They seem to be mostly gravel paths or just plain grass that you were parking on.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a, toss up what you want and it's what you're looking for based on the campsite you want to be in and what you want to see while you're here.
Yeah, we noticed that the majority of the sites right along the road are full. But the back campground had quite a few in it too. So it kind of just depends on what you're looking for and your style and what's available when you go to book.
And there are other activities here besides watching freighters go by, which is fun, but after a while.
How many freighters can you really see go by?
People really get into watching freighters in this part of the state.
True,
just FYI, I mean, there is an app that you can get now that will give you the schedule of freighters that are coming in and out of the area, so you can watch for them when they come through, and it'll give you all kinds of details on where the ship is from and what it's probably
named,
carrying.
what it's carrying, where it's going. Yeah, there's we've encountered a number of people over the years that is how they spend their weekends, is just parked along the river watching the freighters go by. So
could be fun.
Something for everybody, I guess.
But if that's not your thing and you still want to come here and just see the river, there's an archery range here.
Yeah.
There is a trap range and a handgun range. So that's kind of different to see that. There's also, this area is known for originally having savanna and prairie type environment. And that is still, part of that is still here. And there are some trails that you can wander through to see some of that as well.
Yeah, as well as some restoration efforts because prairies used to be really prevalent in the Michigan area prior to settlement. But the farmers wiped it out with their farm fields. And as development came in, there were no longer the controlled fires that actually many of the plants need to revitalize and continue to breed. But they've actually started some restoration efforts to do more of those controlled burns and reestablish the prairie land. So there are some trails that you can walk through. But if walking through prairies is not your thing, there's also the Beta Bridge Trail, and it's a 45-mile paved trail all the way up and down sort of the St. Clair River area, all the way from I believe, the Blue Water Bridge, which is the bridge that goes across to Canada, all the way down to Lake St. Clair. So it's a paved trail for biking, walking, jogging, whatever you have, and it runs right through this park, so it's super convenient. Welcome to Lakeport State Park.
Lakeport State Park is near Fort Gratiot, Michigan, which is just north of Port Huron. And it's kind of a unique park. There's nothing really here except a big day use area with a beach and then a campground. But it's still unique because the day use area is very large. And as you commented, it's one of the few that has a beach that you can use on Lake Huron.
Right, and what we mean by the day use area is the grassy space in the picnic table area is huge, lots of room to lay out towels. The beach itself is not very big. It's pretty long. I mean, you can walk as far as you want to go, really. It's not very wide though, so you're going to be stacked on top of each other in terms of your towel and blanket space. But the bigger issue with this park is that the parking area is actually across the road from the actual beach. It's a pretty long hike up this extremely steep a windy staircase over the road, down the staircase, and back to the beach. So if you've got kids and wagons and strollers, it's going to be a pretty good hike to get from your car down to the beach area.
Yeah, it is a pretty good hike. And it's up and over the road and then back down again. And then you got to repeat the process at the end of the day when you're tired after laying in the sun all day. And despite us being here today when it's, you know, kind of rainy and cold and there's no one here, there's a reason the parking lot is as big as it is. When we were here, would have been a couple of years ago now.
No, was it last summer?
No, it was 2 summers ago, I think. I don't know. Anyway, during a summer, in the last year or two, we met up with Liz Wilcox from the virtual campground. We met her in Port Huron, and it was about 100 degrees.
It was hot.
And so when we were done, you and I decided, let's go find a beach.
We need to find some water.
And we found Lakeport State Park, and it was packed. The parking lot was full. The beach was full. A lot of people here.
Yeah, but the water felt nice. And what we said, though, is most of Lake Huron is rocky. And you do get a few of the rocks here that you can kind of play with. It's fun for the kids. But there's a lot of places when you go on Lake Huron that you're not really going to have a lot of sandy beach. But the water here is actually pretty shallow. So you could walk out quite a ways and still only have it be ankle or waist deep, which is really nice for the kids to play in. As we said, Lakeport State Park is split into 2 units, the day use area and then the campground section. And the campground actually has 2 loops in it. There's a total of 250 campsites divided between the 2 campgrounds. One's a little bit larger than the other and has, oh gosh, I think it's like close to 180 sites, which is pretty massive. The larger campground is mostly a grassy area. It looks like all of the spots are grass. There aren't any or very few sites that have any type of gravel or pad of any kind. They're relatively kind of right next to each other, on top of each other, where you see cars packed in every which way. Trailers, some are sideways, some are in their spots. So you're really going to have to like your neighbors in this campground. There are a few sites that back up to woods around the outer loop. One thing we did notice specifically with that is that the power poles on the outer loops, you have your own power pole. But on the inner loops, you are sharing, it looks like 3 or 4 sites to one power pole. So again, surge protectors are always something that you want to have with you, especially in such a large campground like this. One other thing to keep in mind here is that there is a camp store. So they've got ice and the necessities that you might need if you're camping, if you forgot something like bug spray or marshmallows. So that's kind of right up near the beach area and is definitely a nice feature when you're out camping for the weekend. A bonus to staying in the campground is it has its own beach. So you don't have to go all the way down to the day use area. You just kind of have to walk through the campground, past the camp store, and there's a couple different access points to get you down to the beach. Same thing we found at the day use area though, where the beach is not very wide, but it is fairly long so that you can spread out a ways and not be right on top of each other. So no matter what you do or where you want to go, just remind you to keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.